Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now consider the estimates of the Department of Education and Early Childhood Learning. Does the Honourable Minister have an opening statement?
I do.
The Honourable Minister.
I do. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome everybody to the estimates on this a little bit chilly day here in Manitoba, but things are starting to warm up as we start the estimates process for the 2023 budget, which was a historical budget, and continue to see that our government continues to make strides toward a vision to have all Manitoba children and students succeed, no matter where in the province they live, their cultural background, or their own personal circumstances. The hallmark of a successful education system is one that provides a strong, cohesive continuum of learning from childhood to adulthood in safe, secure environments. Investments in childcare and kindergarten to grade 12 education are critical to preparing young Manitobans for their future. It's been now 14 months, roughly, that the Premier had joined the Department of Education with the Department of Early Childhood Learning. And so now, and I've had the privilege and the honor to be the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning now for, as I said, shortly after just a little over 14 months. So in 23-24, our government will continue the work on advancing Manitoba's K-12 action plan, our path forward to implementing the recommendations of the Manitoba Commission on K-12 education with a focus on improving literacy and numeracy outcomes in Manitoba, and of course also Indigenous inclusion and education. Our government is making unprecedented investments in K-12 education with a $100 million investment in the K-12 system. This equates to a 6.1% increase in funding for the 23-24 school year, plus $106 million in new annualized money. With the investments in the K-12 sector announced in Budget 2023, we delivered on the $1.6 billion four-year funding guarantee. Our government will be protecting students and will be creating through Bill 35 both a registry of teachers and an independent body to improve accountability and transparency related to educator misconduct in K-12 schools. In a spirit of collaboration, cooperation, and truth and reconciliation, Manitoba Education and Early Childhood Learning will focus on the Manitoba Aboriginal Languages Strategy and advance the implementation of Māmitu Isuin, the wonder we are born with, an Indigenous education policy framework. There is an urgency to prioritize and strengthen Indigenous education, Indigenous languages, and Indigenous ways of being, knowing, and doing. In addition, the department is focusing on recruiting more Indigenous teachers, strengthening achievement and well-being for Indigenous students, and deepening our commitment to truth and reconciliation for all. In 2023-24, our government will also continue to focus on early learning and childcare. Last year, the Premier made the fantastic decision, as I've said already, in amalgamating early childhood learning with the K-12 system, which to me just makes sense, Mr. Chair. And I think all Manitobans feel the same way. Our government is moving forward on a number of priorities for the ELCC sector. This includes increasing the number of funded licensed spaces, expanding eligibility for subsidy, supporting wage increases across the sector, and of course, reducing parent fees. A more responsive, equitable, and high-quality childcare system will be enhanced throughout the 5-year Canada-Manitoba Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement. Our government is working to ensure that parents and caregivers have access to more choices, flexibility, and affordability, and to strategically attract and retain more early childhood educators in the sector. Manitoba also remains committed to enhancing diversity and inclusion within early learning environments, supporting French language and Indigenous programming. Our government is focusing on making life more affordable for Manitobans. That is why our Premier announced alongside the Prime Minister that Manitobans will pay a maximum of $10 a day childcare for a regular day of care 3 years ahead of the 2026 agreement with the federal government. At a funded childcare facility, you will pay $10 a day per child for regular hours of care starting April 2nd, 2023, which is only 12 sleeps away, Mr. Chair. Fees are also being reduced to a $10 a day for school-age children attending 3 periods per day. Our government also committed to creating 23,000 new spaces by 2026. That is why I announced over 23 new daycare centers in First Nations communities and rural RMs. These new centers will be built using our innovative ready-to-move model and help create just over 1,700 new childcare spaces across the province. Our goal is to ensure an equitable, aligned, and effective provincial education system where students receive high-quality education and programming to achieve improved outcomes and well-being throughout early learning and childcare, K-12 education, and beyond. In practice, this will mean the following. Parents and caregivers have more information and opportunities to be involved. Early childhood educators, teachers, and staff have professional knowledge, tools, and resources to provide high-quality learning and to prepare our children and students for a rapidly changing world. More teachers and early childhood educators, including French immersion, Francais, and Indigenous educators, are attracted to and retained in the profession. Childcare, school, and system leaders are supported in their roles in building a learning community, supporting educators, improving child and student outcomes, and of course, engaging parents. In 2023-24, we will continue to foster inclusion to ensure a welcoming, safe, and respectful learning environment where all children and students thrive and have a sense of belonging. Indigenous and Francophone children and students, those with diverse learning needs, and from newcomer communities will see their cultures and languages represented and advanced. Diverse and unique experiences, perspectives, skills, and talents will continue to be valued, encouraged, and responded to through inclusive mindsets and practices. By continuing to work together, we can realize a system where equity and excellence exists in every school, in every classroom, for every student. A vision where all Manitoba students, again, succeed no matter where they live in this great province of ours, their cultural background, or their own personal circumstance. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity.
We thank the Honourable Minister for those comments. Now, does the critic form or the official opposition have an opening statement? The Honourable Member for Transcona.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, everybody, for being here this afternoon. I'd like to welcome the Minister and his staff to the process. This is a very important process at this point in the education system here in Manitoba. I have been on record as saying, Mr. Chair, that we are truly at an inflection point as we emerge from the shadow of the pandemic, one that calls for real leadership in this sector. I will tell you, school divisions have been absolutely reeling from not only the impacts, the physical impacts of COVID, of course, some people did get sick, but also what it's meant to the resources that have been strained and the challenges that have been presented to people in the education system. As all can imagine, Mr. Chair, the challenges are numerous and require leadership and require visionary leadership. We talk about in education the opportunity to influence not only our kids, but also influence the direction of our society. This is one, a real responsibility, Mr. Chair, that we can't take lightly. I believe in the efficacy of everybody that's working in a department, but I will say that the department has been diminished in size, Mr. Chair, and that has diminished its efficacy and ability to respond to these challenges right now, very real, that are being faced by school divisions and by other institutions that provide education here in Manitoba. That's a concern of ours, it's a concern of mine. I recall a time, Mr. Chair, when the department was able to provide a lot of, especially for smaller school divisions, a lot of leadership around the professional development pieces and especially around priorities that were determined by the department. I am hoping that that is still able to happen. Smaller school divisions simply don't have the resources available to them, Mr. Chair, that larger school divisions do in providing that type of leadership. I'm hoping that that is still available and something that, like I said earlier, smaller school divisions can access. I'm also wondering, Mr. Chair, of a number of things. As I said earlier, as we emerge from this, we have not only the provincial government that's responsible for education, also democratically elected school boards. Those school boards work with the province to provide a pathway for kids, families, and communities. They are the ones that are close, they are the closest to their communities and the kids that they serve. They have a unique perspective, obviously, and a unique responsibility to ensure that their local needs are met. Now, I can give you some examples, Deputy Speaker, but we'll get to that later on when we get to some of the questioning. I will say that the government missed an opportunity. There was the funding announcement that came in February, and there was an immediate reaction to it, Mr. Chair. One that clearly indicated that many school divisions were not satisfied with the funding announcement. Now, between that time and the time we reached the budget, Mr. Chair, there was an opportunity for the province to respond and say, we're hearing your concerns. The province did not take that opportunity, Mr. Chair, to address those concerns. We are at a point now where many of our school divisions are below the 4% threshold when it comes to having a surplus available to them. Many are now contemplating what it's like to have a zero surplus. This is very concerning, Mr. Chair. Very concerning because it doesn't allow for a school division to react to the very real, not just challenges, but also expenses that they face on a daily basis. So let me give you an example. A trustee shared with me that if we get a stone in our shoe right now, we don't even have the dollars to address that. That's an interesting metaphor because that's what a surplus is intended to do for those contingencies. So what does that look like now? Well, for a small school division, Mr. Chair, it looks like getting that part for that school bus is a real challenge now because they don't have anything in surplus to deal with that because all of the money that's been budgeted for, rightly so, for student learning and for school operations is accounted for, and now they don't have the ability to really pivot and get what's needed so that they can get that child or family to school. So these are some of the challenges that are being faced. These are, like I said earlier, Mr. Chair, was an opportunity here for the province to step in and do something truly innovative. And what I mean by that, Mr. Chair, is because of this issue now, where we have many school divisions in Manitoba that are running below 4% surplus, this is an opportunity for the province to step in and say, we're going to talk to you, come up with the funds necessary so that you can deal with the day-to-day expenses that do come up. And there are many. Some of these challenges, just for a second here. Sorry. Some of these challenges are due to the fact that many people want to come to Manitoba. Manitoba is known as a very welcoming place. And what is the first thing that they experience when people arrive to Manitoba? The experience of going to their local to school when they have a family, obviously, and when they have children, because that's what that people want to do. That's why we've come here. That's why they're here, for safety, to be educated in an environment that they're escaping from that's often violent and quite damaging to a young person's development. I know that many Ukrainian immigrants arrive here now, or refugees, sorry, I misspoke, with trauma. Other refugees arriving from outside of the world with trauma, couple that with the challenges of COVID and all of those things that really the education system, Mr. Chair, really soaks up and really does its very best to respond to. What is needed was truly a visionary piece around how we help trauma affected children that are now coming into our system. Last night we were talking to a school division within the city that has seen the largest influx of Ukrainian refugee kids into the school division, and have been meeting with the province and the department, Mr. Chair, asking for support so that they can provide the services for these kids. The school division is doing its very best job, Mr. Chair. Just like, I mean, that's what we do as teachers. And now I am confident also, Mr. Chair, that the department has heard that message, but now has to respond with some real action so that these challenges can be met. I always have faith, absolutely. But I will tell you, 7 years, Mr. Chair, of persistent underfunding is impacting school divisions right now. I've talked and asked the minister about this numerous occasions in question period around the cumulative effect of underfunding. And right now, after 7 years, school divisions are really feeling it, Mr. Chair. They're feeling it because they're having to make impossible decisions that impact the daily experience of that child, that family, with their school. I hope coming out of this process of estimates that we get some commitments from the department and the minister to address these needs, to ensure kids have a robustly funded education, public education system that meets their needs, knowing that the challenges are numerous, the challenges are there, and that school divisions want to work in partnership with the department to get these challenges met. I appreciate the time for the opening statement. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We thank the official opposition critic for their opening statement. Under Manitoba practice, debate on the minister's salary is the last item considered for a department in the Committee of Supply. Accordingly, we shall defer consideration of line item 16.1 bracket A contained in resolution 16.1. At this time, we will invite the minister's staff to join us at the table, and we ask for the honorable minister to introduce the staff in attendance. Just kind of give me one of them. The honorable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and joining me today for Committee of Supply, I have Dana Rudy, who is my Deputy Minister, Manitoba Education and Early Childhood Learning, to my immediate left. And two over, we have Johnny Lyon, who's my Special Assistant. And joining us also at the table is Andrew Henry, Acting Executive Financial Officer. Also joining us in the room today is Sarah Whiteford, Assistant Deputy Minister, Early Learning and Childcare. Tina Choi Paul, Director, Education Funding Branch. Jeff Kaler, Executive Director, Governance and Policy. Sonia Penner, Assistant Deputy Minister, Corporate Services. Janet Tomey, Assistant Deputy Minister, Student Achievement and Inclusion. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister, and welcome to all the attendees to this meeting. According to our Rule 78, bracket 16, during the consideration of departmental estimates, questioning for each department shall proceed in a global manner with questions put separately on all resolutions once the official opposition critic indicates that questioning has concluded. The floor is now open for questions. The honorable member for Transcona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And like I said earlier, it's I'm looking forward to a robust and fruitful estimates process. I just want to refer to, I think it says page, yes, it's page 13 of the department strategy map. Am I allowed to hold it up? Yes? Okay. I just curious, how is this strategy map communicated with school divisions? Page 13.
The honorable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank the opposition critic, my friend, the MLA for Transcona, for the question. And I too know that this process, the estimates process, it does feel good to be able to be in person this year, to be able to go through this process. And I mean, Manitoba is definitely one of those great provinces that follow the democratic process, to be able to sit with the opposition critic and other members to bring forward questions in this budgeting process called estimates. So to answer the member's question, but before I get to that, I would just like to to state also for the record that I am truly honored and blessed to be the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning, and I am absolutely surrounded by a great team in the department, and I've had the opportunity to tour some of our locations where we've got many great people working in the department throughout the city, and not only throughout the city but also through the province. So the member asked the question in regards to the roadmap as in regards to our structure and how that's communicated with our sector or our education partners. And so through the framework, through continuous learning forum, we make sure that this is shared with each school division, one-on-one with department and their officials as well. And part of the reporting guidelines, it's something that has to be shared as well. But I think even without those reporting guidelines, I believe that we would be meeting closely with those school divisions to make sure that we're sharing this. In regards to the early learning and childcare sector of the department, section of the department, I mean, we do have a consultation table, and we make sure also that we communicate in a monthly newsletter as well. And I know that the department, we have an open door policy, and we do take on many meetings throughout the year with our education partners, and we will continue to do so moving into the future as well.
The honourable member for Transcona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that piece. As just a follow-up to that, this is a very important piece of the estimates book, and this is a very important piece in the department. I certainly would assume that. Is there an expectation that to ensure that school divisions are somewhat aligned to this, or is there a way that this can influence a school division's direction, or does this exist separate from what school divisions are doing?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so through the department strategy map, we do have meetings with the divisions to discuss the framework for continuous improvement. And that's based on, of course, the department, and the meetings that generally happen focus on the progress towards various different targets. And it also gives us an opportunity to collect data, to ask them questions, and to have sit downs and talk about things like graduation rates, grade 9, credit attainment. These the annual planning and reporting guidelines is a strong piece of policy to be able to align our systems. And so a lot of the actions or the supplemental actions are also articulated in the K-12 action plan as well.
The honorable member for Transcona.
So I would like to clarify, this is then developed with stakeholders like school divisions, faculties of education, independent schools.
The honorable minister.
Yes.
The honorable member for Transcona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How often does the minister speak with school divisions throughout the province?
The honorable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and so the department and I meet with school divisions on a daily, on a weekly, on an annual basis as well. And within that, and I know that the member had joined me for the Manitoba Association for School Boards, or Manitoba School Boards Association AGM just late last week as well. These meetings, you know, much like some of our other education partners, we meet with, you know, quite regularly. I know that the member is asking specifically the minister, and I don't have a problem answering openly and honestly, and because we're a transparent government, and I like to believe that we're a transparent Department of Education. I think the meetings with specific school divisions, I would like to have more meetings and endeavor to have more meetings with individual school divisions. In some cases, it seems that some of the meetings with school divisions have happened more than some. But that being said, the department is in constant communication, and again, whether that's daily, weekly, and for sure annually with each and every school division to make sure that we're working on that framework for continuous improvement.
The honorable member for Transcona.
So when your minister talks about continuous improvement, I notice in the estimates book on page 21, talks about strengthening communication across the system. I want to, and he did mention something about meeting on a regular basis, but with the strengthening of communication, did that mean that before there was very little communication happening?
The honorable minister.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the question from the education critic on strengthening communication across the system, and I think that our level of communication from the department to our different education partners has always been really good. I think that there's always room for improvement, and that's why we strongly feel that we should build on that continuous improvement and communication across the system is paramount to make sure that we continue to, again, strive towards success for all students in this great province of ours, again, no matter where they live, their cultural background, or even their personal circumstance. And so with that, so we've got the various key initiatives. We've got the K-12 Education Council. We've got the Minister's Consultation Table and the Child Care Parent Advisory Committee. We strongly work towards our communications and engagement framework, which optimizes communications and engagement activities with stakeholders as part of the department's communication and engagement framework. The framework outlines principles and processes for communication and engagement and provides guidelines, tools, templates, links, and standard operating procedures for engaging with stakeholders and Indigenous rights holders. We do stakeholder briefings. We've improved the website. We've done and continue to do quarterly newsletters. We have, of course, we've got the upcoming K-12 Action Plan annual report, which definitely we are continuing to improve that line of communication more broadly, discussing and communicating the strategies map through these different communication venues. I know that I had heard, as the education minister and Early Childhood Learning Minister for now the past 14 months, that prior to us forming government in 2016, that they felt that a lot of our education partners really felt that the lines of communication was not as great as the previous government had said that it was. I think the fact that we have these different venues to be able to share information back and forth with our education partners, I think has increased, and definitely we will continue to improve upon those. Our department's internet site, we're improving access to the information, policies, and the resources about this public education system and early and childcare by modernizing the department's web presence. In 2022-2023, the department's website was updated with progress on the implementation of the Manitoba's K-12 Education Action Plan. Ongoing communication is also planned. And these are things, as the member knows, I've shared with him on multiple occasions, that didn't exist under the previous government. And I know that, since forming government, we did the K-12, we did the commission for the K-12, or the K-12 commission, which saw, over 30,000 Manitobans take part and participate. And out of that K-12 commission, we came forward with the K-12 action plan, which I have shared copies with the critic. That's a living and breathing document. And what does that mean? That means that we're working, we've got a plan, and it's a continuous improving document as well, to make sure that as we continue to move through the K-12 action plan, we want to make sure that those pillars that are within we're championing, and we're making sure we're having those discussions with our stakeholders, our education partners, to make sure that they have the ability to meet with us, to chime in on how they feel that things are going. We want to make sure that we have that high quality learning for our students, and again, planning for student success. We want to make sure that we've got that student engagement and well-being is another one of our pillars. Excellence in teaching and leadership is another pillar, and of course, responsive systems. And so that goes to the department's internet site. I think that, and I'm sure the member knows, because, from him being 33 years in the education system himself, he knows that there's always, we're lifelong learners. And so to say that the department knows absolutely everything there is to know about education, that's why we work together on making sure that we're building these strong systems, so that at the end of the day, we're making sure that success for all students in Manitoba are achieved. And that goes with the department as well. That goes with our school divisions, that goes with our trustees, our teachers, our support staff, our custodians, our bus drivers, our parents, our students, our business officials, our superintendents, everybody within the system is one great big team, and we have to make sure that we're all working together. And again, making sure that at the end of the day, at the center of everything is success for students and children.
The honourable member for Transcona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad to hear that the department and the minister himself is meeting with stakeholders on a regular basis. With all of this communication that's been going on lately, and I'm sure it's been a tsunami of communication, because I'm receiving many of the same statements and demands for my time around this very important sacred trust that we call public education. One that we're stewards over, Mr. Chair. And like I said earlier in my opening statement, one that we're, I don't believe anyone takes lightly around this table. So I'm curious to know, what are the top 5 concerns that the minister has been hearing from Manitoba school divisions and stakeholders?
The Honorable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so before I get quite to the answer to the member, would like to also talk about new this year that we're establishing a provincial implementation team to further deepen shared understandings of our collective work. And that's going to take in all school divisions. We're also establishing an education council to strengthen intersectoral communications as well, which, again, a lot of these, so I know that I talked about the K-12 Commission, 30,000 Manitobans, and chimed in. From that, we came out with the K-12 Action Plan, which, again, I read some of the pillars that were part of that. But then also, and I know that I shared the document with the member as well, about a week after that, we came out with the Maumituisuin, the Wonder We Were Born With, which is sort of within those 4 pillars of the K-12 Action Plan, we have Maumituisuin, which then is the Indigenous Education and Inclusion document to make sure that throughout the curriculum and throughout school divisions and schools, that we're making sure that the wonder we are born with, our Indigenous education inclusion, is woven within those 4 pillars of the K-12 action plan, both of which are living, breathing documents. And then, of course, we came out with the framework for a learning document. And these things, Mr. Chair, didn't exist under the previous government. They found that they felt that the status quo was rolling along okay, and they didn't want to go and talk to education partners. Matter of fact, majority of the time their doors, I think, were closed. I know that the member from Transcona knows that my office door is definitely open to him, especially because Manitoba is a small place. It's a 16th degree of separation, and even though I have not had the pleasure of working with the member from Transcona within his education capacity, and nor has he with me, again, Manitoba is a small province, especially in the education world. We've got many mutual friends that speak highly of him, and so I take their word at that. So the member mentions about the top 5 issues that we're hearing, and the nice thing is, I can definitely share these with him, and in no particular order, because I think that they're all very important. And this comes from that open collaboration and working with our education partners, making sure that pretty much on each and every committee that we have within the education department, all the education partners have a seat at those tables. And so, of course, we've heard about new schools, and within those new schools, I know the member is mainly, I think I read the news release a few weeks ago accurately, but I think the department of second half of my department, education and early childhood learning, I think is all under his critic portfolio now, or is that, he can answer that later on. But within those new schools, we're also making sure that we're increasing those childcare spaces. And so, we've announced over 20 new schools to be completed by the year 26-27. That's one of the topics, of course. Another topic that we hear about in the department, and I hear from many of my education partners throughout the province, is student outcomes. And that came out loud and clear from the K-12 Commission, which drove us towards the K-12 action plan, and of course, Maamituiswin, to make sure that we're focusing on those numeracy, literacy, and Indigenous education inclusion rates as well. Education funding model. We're definitely hearing that. We have heard that. We're taking part and making sure that we're actioning that. And many of the comments that I'm hearing is, this has been going on for well over 20 years. And they say, to myself, MLA for Lac Du Bonte, Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning, can you tell us why it's been for over 20 years and why the NDP didn't move on it? I said, I cannot jump in the DeLorean and back the truck up and find out why they didn't do it. But they just didn't want to do it. And I just think because it's complicated. And the member from Transcona knows that the funding formula is complicated. Because he knows as well as I know, and I know that he's just recently been elected to this great position. He knows himself. This is probably part of the reason why he got into this, to put his name forward to be an MLA, is because he knows that if it was so easy to have been done, that the NDP would have done it, because they like to take the easy road through. And this is not an easy thing. Many complicated pieces that goes into the funding formula. So what are we doing? We're continuing to work with our education partners to make sure we're getting this right. Because each and every student, each and every taxpayer, each and every parent, caregiver, each and every education professional, whether that's a teacher or support staff, or administration wants to make sure we're getting this right. So we're working on that. Student safety. I don't know if I might have enough time, Mr. Chair. Well, for this time anyways, and I can talk more about this, but student safety is paramount. Keeping kids safe. Again, center of everything we do in the Department of Education, and I strongly believe in the heart of hearts of every education professional within the system, the children are at the center. And we need to make sure that we're strengthening the systems and the services to make sure that they are achieving success, but also we're keeping them safe. Bill 35, just introduced the other day. Going to make sure that I'm hoping for unanimous.
Excuse order.
Yes.
I just want to remind the minister that you cannot talk about bills that are currently within or in front of the House.
Okay.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a rookie mistake. I believe this coming October will be my 12th year here, so sorry about that. But at the end of the day, student safety is paramount, and we need to make sure that we're doing everything possible to ensure that. And then, of course, student presence and engagement. We hear this from stakeholders, partners, community activists, making sure that at the end of the day, the member from Transcona knows, I know, that students learn best when they are present and they're at school, in front of and working with those hardworking teachers and support staff, making sure that, again, at the end of the day, their successes are at the heart of the topic. And so student presence and engagement is definitely one of the top 5 things that we've heard. So I've listed 5 for you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
The Honorable Member for Transcona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the Minister for the answer to that question. Interesting that he brought up the education funding model. The reason people are clamoring for an equitable education funding model is because they've seen the percentage of the provincial contribution, Mr. Chair, diminish quite precipitously these past 7 years. Before 2016, the provincial portion of the education funding model was close to 70%. And school divisions did not feel that they were being shortchanged at all. As a matter of fact, they felt that they had a true partner in the provincial government in doing so, and having the funding necessary to provide the programming that the minister talks about. And when he says they're putting children at the center, that requires real, tangible investments, especially coming out of the pandemic, and especially with the challenges that are being faced now by many kids as they get back into school. These are, I just want to correct the record on that. The reason for the ed funding clamoring right now is because they're seeing this government reduce their portion quite substantially, and their responsibility for that. In 2016, it was $1.62 billion. As we approach this year, and what I find interesting, Mr. Chair, is that I can't find that anymore on the website regarding the framed documents for the past year, which I find very interesting and actually quite concerning, because I can't bring current numbers to this. That is quite concerning. Because if you look at it, the last time I looked at it, the provincial share was approaching $1.7 billion after 7 years. So to have these conversations, we need to have accurate numbers available to us. Now, I do know that many school divisions have communicated with the department and with the minister around funding concerns to the point where They're imploring the minister and the department that chronic underfunding has forced them to make some very difficult decisions. We have regularly seen in the past 3 weeks of this budget season, Mr. Chair, school divisions having to make decisions that impact directly student programming. Even a division such as Pembina Trails cutting full day, everyday kindergarten because they simply don't have the resources to maintain a very important program. And I know the minister has taken pride in the fact that early childhood education is now included in the department. Here's a real opportunity to really bridge that with school divisions and communicate with school divisions the opportunity to see full-day kindergarten throughout the province. That requires real investment, not just from a school division, but also from the province, Mr. Chair. These are things that need to happen. And I know many school divisions have communicated this with the minister. They've also communicated that they feel that a lot of their communication that they're getting is one way, coming from the department only. And even when they meet with the minister, their concerns are not being acted upon. So what are they left to do, Mr. Chair? Make impossible decisions. This is the impact. So when we talk about education funding and the education funding model, the reason it's such a concern now is because of the diminishing presence of the province in this. School divisions now, there are school divisions, Mr. Chair, right now that are approaching a 50-50 split in funding between the province and the local levy, when they know that the local levy has been frozen. And school divisions now cannot just make money appear despite the demands of, Mr. Chair, increased enrollment, more demands for students with additional needs. These are the very real pressures being felt by the system. And that is why there's a real clamoring right now for a new funding model, because currently, as shown through the frames that we have access to, this government isn't living up to its obligations when it comes to truly partnering with school divisions regarding this issue. So I have a question for the minister. Can he tell us why he's not listening to these concerns from school divisions and not acting upon these very real pressures that are being felt by the system?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank the member from Transcona for the question, because it gives me an opportunity to basically, in a couple ways, sort of reframe some of his questioning. Right off the bat, I'm just gonna educate the member, and please don't take that as a disrespectful thing, because in some of these things, coming in as the MLA for Lac Des Bonnie, I didn't quite know all of this, even though I lived in the world of education prior to this. So the member's asking about the frame and the numbers, and he put on the record that he can't find some of this stuff on the web. And I know that he's frantically looking for something as we speak, but that being said, I'm just gonna calm the waters on this one. So the 21-22 frame is online, and the member and myself did go over some questions last year as well. The 22-23 is usually posted May and June annually. So stay tuned, and that is not something that is brand new to the system. This has been happening for quite some time. And again, the 21-22 frame is online, and the 22-23 is posted this coming May, June. And then of course, the 23-24, which is this coming school year, which we have put in $100 million of new funding to the K-12 system, which is a 6.1% increase. And that is something, Mr. Chair, that we have seen an enrollment of only a 2.4 increase in enrollment from our 21-22 school year, which then the funding is looked upon for the 23-24 school year. So we're looking at from 21 to 2022, and it's in Hansard, it's going to be in Hansard, a 2.4 increase in enrollment. And again, I appreciate the member giving me the opportunity to be able to put on the record that this year alone, we've increased funding to the K-12 system by 6.1% to the tune of $100 million. Another piece of information that it's unfortunate that the member from Transcona, but I really don't think it's necessarily the member from Transcona. I think it's got to be somebody within the depths of the NDP that want to put misinformation out there. When we talk about the frame, and we talked about this last year, and I tried to make sure that this was fairly clear, but we talked about the frame budget, and the member talks about the different percentages of provincial funding going to education. And he knows that we on the government side, the Progressive Conservative government, has made a promise in 2019 to take education tax off of property. And we're doing that. And this fall, we'll see a 50% reduction of education tax off of property. In the 2021-22 frame budget, it shows that the provincial contribution is 67.5%, which is the provincial contribution, which excludes the education property tax rebate. When we include the education property tax rebate, keep in mind, this is the year prior, it brings the provincial contribution to over 75%. Now, I can't remember, of course, because I wasn't around, or I wasn't born yet, I better make sure I clarify that. In the late 50s, when the one-room schoolhouses that were created, there was a split of an 80-20 split on provincial contributions and then local levies and local contributions. And as time had sort of continued to go, under governments of other stripes, so I'm not just painting the NDP with the nasty brush here, that ratio had started to reduce. And so I'm proud to be part of a PC government that has seen the contributions from the provincial contributions go up dramatically, and to the tune of, we're over 75.6 to be exact. And he saw that actually in the frame report last year. And at the bottom of page 4 of the frame report, because it's something that is just embedded in my memory because I had to say this multiple times. The member refused to take a look at the bottom of the page where there was an asterisk talking about that if you took into account the education property tax rebate, that the provincial contribution would be over 75%. Now, again, I mean, fairly high rate of contribution coming from the province. We're looking at $100 million this year alone, 100.2 million, and that's broken down. A $94.8 million or 6.1% increase to public schools, and an increase of 5.4 million, which is another 6.1% increase to independent schools. That's in the news release, so nobody needs to rush or wait for a pen. Support for public schools are further broken down. 62.9 million increase in operating support, which includes an additional 20 million, which address cost pressures. 5 million extra for special needs, along with increases to other existing grants. Now, I know the member talks about supporting students with special needs, and I know that the member knows that during my time in the education system, before I became an MLA, again, I didn't serve as long as the member did, but for my 17 years, I worked in student services for quite some time. And I feel that making sure that we're supporting students with special needs is very important. And I know that our premier feels it's very important to support students with special needs. So on top of that, those operating supports to school divisions, we've also, since the premier has been the premier, has increased funding to students with special needs by an additional $17 million. So this year, in the 2023-2024 budget, which I'm hoping the member is going to support, is seeing a $5 million increase. Also, we're seeing within that large increase, 6.1% increase, $100 million. We're also looking at $8 million increase in capital support, $23.9 million increase in the property tax offset grant. And in addition to all of that, just to show how much our department and myself, the member mentions, listening to our education partners, they had asked that the last couple of years to make sure that the $106 million that we included last year was annualized. And that was 77 million for wage and other cost pressures, 7 million last year for students with special needs. That's on top of the operating. And of course, 22 million for strengthening student support and learning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm sure we've got more good news to share after the next question.
The honourable member for Transcona.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been clear these last number of years that education funding has not matched the rate of inflation. I talked earlier in my opening statement that since since the inflation rate has been higher than what the funding increases has been, it has resulted in a cumulative effect where school divisions right now are having to make choices between providing school busing for kindergarten kids or not. And that's in Hanover School Division. All this funding that the minister talks about, if it were truly having a positive impact, you wouldn't have, Mr. Chair, school divisions lining up during their budget presentations to their communities saying that they don't have enough provincial government support just to maintain the status quo. Last night, in having a dialogue with the local school division that I represent, they were really concerned around how the challenges that they've communicated to the minister and his department are not being met by the financial support from this government. I said earlier, Mr. Chair, in my opening statement that this was truly a unique opportunity to have some positive impact for school divisions that are struggling to provide programming that they know their children need, especially as they are coming back from the pandemic. Why was this a unique opportunity, Mr. Chair? It was a unique opportunity because this government had record revenues from 3 sources that could have been dedicated to this sacred trust that we know as public education, Mr. Chair. Record revenue from Manitoba Hydro, record revenue from federal transfers, and record revenue from income tax. And we know of the challenges that are being faced, and I can just remind the minister of what's happening in a school division like Lakeshore, where they're having to worry about whether or not they can get busing or a purchase a bus so that they can keep the bus ride under an hour for kids that need to be at school. Instead, this government makes the decision to send even more dollars to mall developers as opposed to supporting school divisions that need the financial support today. Again, these are choices that were made by this government. I mentioned earlier in my other statement, Mr. Chair, that there are many school divisions now in this province that can't meet that 4% threshold to have as a surplus, because many have had to dig into it just to maintain the status quo, because the government hasn't lived up to the opportunity, I would say, to take the opportunity now as kids were returning to school after the pandemic to ensure that their needs are being met. So when the minister says that they're funding these needs, clearly school divisions aren't receiving the same message. So there seems to be a gap in understanding here. So I want to ask the minister, Mr. Chair, can he tell us why he's not responding or listening to these school division concerns that have come forward to his office and his department?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chair, And as the member knows, and what I continue to hear a little bit in his line of not quite questioning, but sort of just carrying on and chatting a little bit. And there is some really good points in there, and I'm definitely going to address some of them. But also what I'm hearing a little bit too is that, you know, for a year and a half, the member opposite really wanted, you know, some more autonomy for school divisions. And now it's seeming like the last few weeks, through his line of questioning, it's sounding as if he's wanting more and more of the power to go into the Minister of Education's department to then tell school divisions what they should or should not do. But I have to disagree with the member from Transcona that they have local autonomy. That's why they have elected school boards. And so when we give astronomical, historical, unprecedented funding to the K-12 education system of $100 million or a 6.1% increase, Mr. Chair, I don't know. I don't know where this member is, where his line of questioning is coming from. He talks about how myself, he's being pretty pointed, but myself and the department is not listening to the needs of school divisions. He brought up River East Transcona, and it sounds as if from him, he had met with them last night, I guess, getting ready for today, maybe for a coffee or whatever else. But I have to disagree with the member. I think that school boards are elected and they run to represent their local communities, and then they make decisions with the money to see what is their priorities for the school divisions within their own communities. And they work with, I'm assuming they work with, I know they work with their administrators and their teaching staff. And I'm sure that the member from Transcona has been shared the fact that I actually had a meeting with the chair and the superintendent and the board of River East Transcona not that long ago. Actually, it's in November, and they were talking about funding, and they were talking about getting ready for their budgets and all that type of thing. And I know that they also met with the department officials January 19th, 2023, to talk about the funding pressures. And so I'm happy to report to the member from Transcona, and I've said this multiple times, it's in Hansard, that the $100 million of astronomical funding to the K-12 system, 6.1% increase, and I'll get to a couple of the pieces, the members talking about inflation and that. I mean, we're talking since 2015-16 when the former government actually decided to come forward with a budget, not just a financial report or statement that they did leading up to the 2016 election. We've seen a 25.9% funding increase from then till today. 25.9%. River East Transcona receiving this year for 23-24 a 9.8% increase, or $11 million. I would like the member from Transcona, if he so would see fit, to put on the record did the school division not ask for this coming school year $10 million? And they are receiving $11 million. He can fact check that with whoever he was talking about, if he feels that he should put those names on the record, who he was talking with. So in regards to River East Transcona, again, 9.8%, $11 million. The school division has seen an increase since 2021 of 25.9. And from 2015-16, I just have to correct the record, so just so that the member doesn't go back into Hansard and say, well, you said 25.9. So the rate of inflation was actually 25.5 from 2015-2016. So when we start talking about inflation, and we've got 6.1 increase for next year, the people who talk about the rates of inflation, and specifically for Manitoba, the forecast for 2023 is somewhere around the 3% for 2023. And for 2024, they're looking at 2.2. And for the 23-24 school year, we're looking at a 6.1% increase. Now, there's many factors that we do take into account when we're talking about funding. And as the member knows, and he's asked today, and he will continue to ask, why does the PC government not do what we never did when we were in government? And the nice thing is, I can report to the member that we're doing it. We're doing the funding model review. We're asking Manitobans about what are some of the priorities that Manitobans want to see? That's the K-12 Commission. Over 30,000 Manitobans. Mr. Chair. So we talk about, I'm not going to be sarcastic. I'm not going to sit here and be sarcastic and tell the member, has he not heard that there was this worldwide pandemic? There's been some major challenges, not only here in Manitoba, but across Canada and throughout the world due to the pandemic. We've seen increased fuel costs, which then equates to transportation costs, supply and demand of those parts that the member mentioned earlier. And again, this is something that the member could stand up to his leader and stop getting on the side of the Prime Minister, and they continue to champion and want an increased carbon tax, which we know is one of those taxes that definitely affects transportation and the fuel costs. And Manitoba is a large province when it comes to education or commuting or anything along those lines. So when the member from Transcona, I'm going to more so say that his leader stands up and is hand in hand with the Prime Minister to make sure that the carbon tax continues to inflate and increase. These are cost pressures. And we, the Progressive Conservative government, are making sure that we're challenging those. And we're trying to make life more affordable. And that's why I'm hoping that the member from Transcona will see fit to support the 23-24 budget. And again, just to reiterate for the member that for 2023, we're looking at roughly somewhere between a 3.5% inflationary rate, and 2024, a 2.2.
The honourable member for Transcona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to refer back to what I was talking about earlier about the cumulative effects of inflation. The minister has mentioned and that there was $100 million put in, but that clearly isn't meeting the needs of school divisions right now after 7 years of persistent underfunding. I will tell you that through just basic analysis, the increase needed to be closer to $225 million just to get back to 2016 purchasing power. That's what school divisions throughout the province would have needed to receive. I'm glad the minister acknowledged the really significant cost pressures of rural school divisions, especially around transporting kids to school. Yes, fuel costs have increased. Absolutely. The other interesting piece here is that diesel fuel, which fuels almost all of the buses, hasn't decreased the same amount as regular gasoline has. So those cost pressures still exist. Absolutely. I said earlier, Mr. Chair, that we had a unique opportunity in this province this year with record revenue and with teachers around that PC caucus table to forcefully advocate for an increase in funding the public schools that would have an impact and at least get it to 2016 dollars. The analysis is there. The department knows what those dollars are. They chose not to do it when given the unique opportunity that they had to truly invest in our youth. Not just our youth, our families and communities. These are important responsibilities. And data right now is showing that a vast majority of our school divisions are receiving less operating funding right now than they have in previous years, going back to 2013. These are the cost pressures, the very real ones that are being faced. And we needed to have a proactive government that was ready to come up with the solutions. School divisions already have this data. They know what they need. They've been communicating that regularly. Many members of the House have been invited to budget meetings, not just here in the city, but outside of the city, because they want their MLAs to know that they need real, tangible support, Mr. Chair. I'm not saying anything that nobody around this committee room hasn't heard before regarding that demand from local communities. We've heard that loud and clear. And as mentioned earlier, school divisions now are dipping into surpluses just to keep the lights on and the buses rolling for this upcoming year. And we're not even talking about yet what could be happening with wage increase and settlements that'll have to come down the pipe. That will really put a lot of pressure on school divisions, especially smaller ones. When meeting with a number of school divisions, that is one of their concerns that they bring up. How are they going to meet those wage settlement demands that are going to come through? So these are some of the real pressures that are being faced, Mr. Chair. Again, we needed a government to step up to the challenge right now that's being faced here with providing services to our kids, our families, and our communities. I say that on a regular basis because these are important investments. So my question for the minister right now is, does he think that school division should be forced to borrow money just to avoid making cuts?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when we start talking about funding, and I know that I've shared this on more than one occasion with the member, that, you know, we're talking about $100 million in this year alone, which is an increase of 6.1% in funding to public schools. Within that, also, different things that end up happening throughout the year as well. And so within the form of grants and those types of things, we also have $117 million that's built into the budget that helps with those additional cost pressures that, again, unlike the previous government, we set up conversations with our education partners, and that 117 million is not allocated, of course, for next year as well, and that's sort of held for those in-year challenges. And so, in addition to that, over the last 3 years, to support schools, we've also put in Safe Schools funding to the tune of $275 million. Last year alone, and I know that the member from Transcona didn't necessarily jump up and down and give myself or the department some credit, but we also put in $77 million to support wage and other cost pressures to school divisions. And then again, last year was $7 million for students with special needs and $22 million for the strengthening student support, which we talked about already. And with all of that, all of last year's support was $106 million. Of last year, it was one-time funding, and we had those consultations and conversations with our school divisions. And they were asking if we could annualize that, the $106 million, right into the budget. And so we did. That was $106 million put into the budget on top of the $100 million of the 6.1% increase for 23-24. Significant investments in education. Again, for this coming year, that $100 million, a $62.9 million increase in operating support, which includes an additional $20 million, which addresses cost pressures, $5 million for special needs. That's this year. $8 million to increase in capital support, $23.9 million increase in the property tax offset grant. But the member doesn't want to talk about those figures. He's pulling numbers out of I don't even know where. He says the numbers that he's pulling out is from his conversations with his school board. Okay, well, I've given him the opportunity to share a little bit of that. I had mentioned that we had met with his school board, River East Transcona, and again, they were forecasting cost pressures of around $10 million. We gave them 11. Making sure that we are listening, and we know that the member from Transcona, especially his leader, the member for Fort Rouge, strongly advocates for the old status quo. So what would they have done? I've heard for the last few years, school divisions and our education partners want to see fairness and equity, fairness and equity, fairness and equity. I agree. They want to see fairness and equity. So that's why myself, the Premier and the department have been working hard to try to bring that fairness and equity to the table. I know that the member from Transcona and his leader, the member for Fort Rouge, would have taken that $100 million. First of all, they would have never given $100 million to education. They never did. They never have. They never would. I don't care what they say. They would have taken that $100 million and they would have put it into the old funding model. Why? Because they would have caved to those particular pressures that are out there, which then would have seen even more of a disparity of unfair, inequitable funding for our kids in Manitoba. And again, I'm not necessarily painting the member from Transcona with the same brush. I am talking historical NDP mindset. I'm glad to see once in a while that the member from Transcona gets in his vehicle and gets outside of the perimeter. But I think that our school divisions within Winnipeg and our school divisions that are in the city of Brandon, city of Portage, other cities in this great province of ours, but also rural and northern Manitoba, deserves fairness and equity. That's why that funding model review, we took it upon ourselves to listen to the K-12 Commission. I don't know if I've mentioned this today yet, but the last commission, Royal Commission on Education in the province of Manitoba, hadn't been done since 1959. That was before I was born, which is absolutely unheard of. I can't even believe that that's what happened. So that's why we took it upon ourselves to make sure that we're listening to Manitobans. So we did the K-12 Commission, and I have to thank many of my colleagues that I have the pleasure of working with to embark on that. We did many parent engagements and came forward with the K-12 action plan, came forward with Mama Tuiswin, making sure that we are embarking on making sure that students are succeeding in numeracy and literacy and in Indigenous education and inclusion. The member also knows that when it comes to numeracy and literacy, he doesn't ever want to talk about this, usually. I'm waiting for some questions in question period on this. He talked about so many questions that he's asked in the House on so many different topics. Since beginning of March, 118 questions total, 7 education questions. You know why he's not asking so many questions? It's because we're doing such a good job on education. The department's working hard. We've got a rock star team around me, and the Premier is trusting the work that we are doing. And that's why this year, in budget 2023, you've seen $100 million go to the K-12 system. That's a 6.1% increase. Again, if all of this was easy, the NDP would have done it, but they didn't. The NDP inherited, when they came into power in the early 2000s, and I'm educating some of the members across the way because I don't think they're being told the full story in their caucus. Manitoba was sitting 3rd in numeracy literacy. Shortly thereafter, they added science. By 2014, Manitoba was 10th and further behind 9th. We are making sure that we're building a system, repairing a system that is going to see student success no matter where they live in this province. And with that comes that $100 million of investment in budget 2023 and I encourage every member in the NDP caucus to support it unanimously.
The honourable member for Transcona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like I said earlier, I was looking forward to a really robust conversation about a very important topic, public education. One that we, like I said earlier, take very seriously simply because of the stewardship notion of this really important service that provincial governments in Canada provide to their citizens. I'm going to say, and I'm going to quote the finance chair of the River East Transcona School Division, Mr. Chair, right now. I'll do that. He says that provincial funding over the last number of years has been substantially shorter than what we needed in comparison to inflation. Now, I've asked questions about that earlier. He goes on to say, as well as the number of new students we are receiving and the funding pressure and the pressure of new enrollment. Since September of 2022, enrollment has increased in that school division, River East Transcona, by close to 900 students, many of which are war-affected Ukrainian refugees. We've talked about this. We know that they're there, Mr. Chair. We know that they require significantly more services in order to provide for their needs. Absolutely, school divisions are going to do the very best to get that done, Mr. Chair. What they want is they want a partner in the provincial government to do that. Now, I know the minister talks about trust, fairness, and equity, but no one trusts this government to be fair or equitable when it comes to redistributing wealth in this province. We see that with the property tax rebate that's going out, disproportionately favoring those and corporations that really don't need that. Sending money out of the province that could go and stay right here to deal with the needs that we're facing right now, Mr. Chair. Again, as I said earlier, these are challenges that require the government to step up and provide the support that's been necessary. We hear that from school divisions all the time. And what they feel is that they're not being heard. Especially when we see with this budget that the member for Lac Du Bonnet, the Minister of Education, says is an important budget, yes, but it transfers such a significant amount of wealth to those that don't need it that one is left to wonder where their priorities are. That's the piece that is really frustrating. We have, evidently, in this time that we've been sitting here, we have different definitions of fairness and equity. Fairness demands that when challenges are placed in front of you, that you tackle them in a manner that people will understand as being equitable. And right now, I don't know if that's the case in this province when it comes to funding of public education. We have clearly established, Deputy Chair, that since 2016, funding has not kept pace with inflation. Even this latest announcement is below inflation. That's a challenge that has to be met. And like I said earlier, I know that there are people in the department that are willing to meet this challenge, except the PC caucus right now, Mr. Chair, isn't willing to partner with its department and its school divisions that it has to work with to provide the necessary funding to deal with these challenges, Mr. Chair. It's clear. It's been established. Many members have sat around the same budget consultation meetings that I've sat around. They've heard it from school divisions. There are choices that have been made here that are detrimental to kids, families, and communities. They have chosen to redistribute wealth in an inequitable fashion. What's the cost of that, Mr. Chair? The cost is school divisions don't have the funding they need to provide the services that their kids, communities, and families require. This is a real challenge, one that's not being met. I don't doubt, Mr. Chair, the willingness of the department to meet the needs and to meet what's being asked of them by school divisions. I don't. However, caucus members have the opportunity to forcefully advocate for public education. Clearly, with what funding has been, Mr. Chair, it's fallen on deaf ears. And it hasn't been, this challenge has not and is not being met. And these are situations right now that we're getting to.
Order. The hour being 5 p.m. Committee rise.